Hey guys, we just wanted to put a little disclaimer before the beginning of this episode. This week we're talking about Dear Evan Hansen, and Dear Evan Hansen deals with a lot of topics that might be triggering, including suicide, mental health, and anxiety. So if any of those are triggers for you, you might just want to skip this episode. We won't be upset, I promise. It's also a little long, so maybe that needs a disclaimer too. Enjoy the episode.
Dear listener, today's going to be a good day, and here's why.
Because today, the day is finally here! We're talking about Dear Evan Hansen. I'm Becca.
And I'm Eni, and this is Sincerely Us, a podcast for the casual musical theater fan. The day is here.
I have finally seen it.
I have been waiting March, April, May, June, 4 months. Math is hard.
I have been waiting since October.
Well, I've had tickets since... Actually, October as well. I've had tickets since October, so I've been waiting. I was waiting since October to see it in March, but now I've been waiting since March for you to see it so that we can talk about it because, oh my God, you finally saw it.
Not only did I see it, Eni, but I saw it with Ben Levi Ross, my favorite Broadway actor, my favorite Evan, the love of my life. Ben Levi Ross.
This week.
This week. This has been consistent since he, got Evan Hansen. This has been very consistent.
Okay, fair enough.
I keep getting scared that I'm not recording.
So what'd you think?
What did I think? Okay.
Oh, actually, hold on. Let's, clarify. We're talking Dear Evan Hansen, which is a Broadway show that has been out for 3 years? 2 years? I don't know.
It was the year after Hamilton, and Hamilton was 2015. Because they swept the 2016 Tonys, and I think Dear Evan Hansen swept the 2017 Tonys.
We'll say 3-ish years.
Yeah.
It is literally the show that bonded our friendship. It is the glue that sticks us together.
It is what our show is named after.
Yes. And it's amazing and we love it. So this is what we're talking about this week. Now, I know that the last 2 episodes that we've come out with have been strictly one show based episodes. And that's not really the path that we want to take. But Becca's been so active in the theater community lately that we kind of just had to go that route. And so this will probably be our last one show based episode for a little while. So I hope everyone enjoys it. Okay, what'd you think?
That is such an open-ending question. What do you mean, what did I think? Obviously, I actually was surprised. It was way funnier than I thought it was going to be. The humor, especially the opening monologue. Also, I know this is a new show, so it's going to be tons and tons and tons of spoilers. We're literally going to go up and down this show because it's my favorite show. It and Newsies are 1 and 2. So I know the show came out a couple years ago, but this is definitely going to be the most spoilers. It's brand new-ish. It's new for theater, if that makes sense. It's not new this season. But it's not Aladdin. It's definitely not Little Shop. It's contemporary.
Yeah, it's a very contemporary show and it's only been out for 3 years. So if you haven't seen it, we're sorry, but we're definitely going to be talking specifics about the show. And we might actually stay on topic this episode, so wish us luck.
We definitely are going to because I have so many thoughts.
I'm so excited we're finally talking about it, especially since you saw it. We're recording on Sunday. Becca saw it on Wednesday, and her and I literally have not had a conversation about it because we wanted to save the actual conversation for this recording. So I'm excited. I need you to start talking about it now because I'm bursting at the seams. So go.
Okay. So it's very funny. Way funnier than I ever thought it was going to be. I actually started watching a bootleg a couple months ago and then realized what I was doing and stopped immediately because I knew I was seeing it. I haven't read any of the books. So I was like as blind as you can be, I guess, with knowing the show inside out. I knew there was a conflict because of the song Good For You, and like I knew that he fights with his mom because of that song, but I didn't know any of the details that you couldn't find out from the songs. So when he opens on stage with his opening monologue and he's just going on and on about how his hands are sweaty, and that and he went to the jazz band concert and all this stuff, I was like, this is hilarious. And I knew I related to Evan, but I didn't realize I related this much to Evan. What were your thoughts on when you first saw it?
Okay, so I unfortunately didn't get to see Ben Levi Ross. I saw the understudy, who I can't remember his name, and I know he has
Stephen
a lot
Christopher
of...
Anthony.
Yes, all three first names, Stephen Christopher Anthony. He was amazing, first of all. Like, yes, he's the understudy, but like he was great as Evan. And I remember thinking the same thing. Going into it, like getting to the show, I was having a really stressful day. So I was kind of like on a down slope, but actually sitting there and watching it. And the first scene you see Evan like basically having a panic attack. Like his hands are getting sweaty. He's freaking out about a million things. And it's just like, it's funny only because it's so relatable. Like, and it's so well portrayed that it's just like you can't help but laugh, because I feel like everybody has been through that, like super nervous for the first day of school, and like that it was so good. I love it so much. Oh my God, I'm so excited.
I also I didn't really care for the parents I love does anybody have a map, just because it's funny, but I didn't really care for the parents on the soundtrack, and the parents were like one of the selling points for the first half of the show. They were so funny.
The moms especially. Evan's mom is like my mom personified. Like my mom I went to go see the show with my mom. This was like part one of like my birthday celebration. So like I went with my mom and my stepdad and Christy and her boyfriend at the time, now fiance, and her cousin, and then my cousin. So we went with two 16-year-olds to see this show as well, which was like incredible. But yeah, my mom, does anybody have a map? My mom looked back at me and was like, why didn't you tell me that this is what this is about? And I'm like, man, we haven't even gotten to the second act yet. And yeah, the moms are great. They're so different and yet so the same, which is, I guess, kind of the point. It's that, you know, however different your parents are, they both all parents kind of struggle with the same things. And you know, I feel like everyone's parents are just kind of figuring things out, you know, as they go along, which is what the intro of the show is.
Yeah, it's cool because the moms are so similar in the fact that they just want what's best for their son, and they're both just trying so hard, and yet they have such different sons. Like,
yeah, they do.
Evan and Connor are so similar and yet so different with how they deal with their anxiety. I don't know why, but I didn't expect Connor to be so anxious. Or even like because you don't really get to know his character from the music, which is hilarious because the whole show is about him.
It really is. And what's great, honestly, I don't know, I can't wait for you to actually read the book now that you've seen the show, and now you're going to read the novel, but you actually learn a lot more about Connor in the novel than you do in the show at all, like the entire show. So, but in the show, yeah, Connor, you don't get a sense of his personality other than his like teenage angstiness, and like just through the soundtrack, the cast album. But in the show, you definitely see more of his personality and more of his like anxieties and more of his like shortcomings, I guess.
Yeah, and there was a line that really stuck out to me. I mean, this is later in the show, after Connor has already committed suicide. But when Zoe was talking about him, and she said something about how her brother would like bang on the door and say that he was going to kill her. And like she was like freaking out, and she said that, and I was like, that is the perfect like phrase or the perfect way to explain who his character was in like one sentence.
Yeah.
Because we all know people like that. We all know, you know, the kids that are honestly scary. Like, he threw a printer at a second grade teacher. Like, that was the whole part of his... You only learn little tidbits about Connor, and you learn like how violent he is and all of that just from those two stories. And it was something that I wasn't expecting at all.
Yeah.
I don't know why. But I guess I'd never really thought about Connor's character until I actually saw the show, which, again, the whole show was about him.
Yeah, of course. So when I listened to the cast album before seeing the show, yeah, I mean, Connor's kind of playing second fiddle to Evan, because obviously the show is Dear Evan Hansen, and you're learning about Evan's whole journey through this insane deception that he's going with, that he's doing on everyone, I guess. And I remember thinking a little bit about Connor, but I kind of just chopped it up to, okay, this is a kid who was going through something and, like, you know, obviously had, you know, his feelings about his life and what he was going through, and then ultimately, unfortunately, ends up, you know, committing suicide. And, but you don't really think more about him just because he's not the center focus in any of the, you know, in the cast album. But when you actually see it on stage and how they utilize, you know, him and his, and, you know, like, I guess the ghost of him, as, you know, Evan sees him, like, kind of as his conscience. It's so great. Like, I love the show so much.
I know. Me and my mom keep entering the lottery every single day so that we can get $25 tickets. Because I spent way too much money on my first ticket, and I don't really want to spend that much more, because we were like 6th row. So, yeah, Connor is such an interesting character that just because, like, the first time I was so focused on Evan, obviously, because that's who the show is about, I would love to go see it again just so I could see, like, all the different things that the guy that played Connor, Merrick Smith, did. First of all, with how little, like, you know about Connor, it's so interesting to think about how, like, Mike Feist, who originated him, and now Merrick Smith, who's on the first national tour, about how they literally had to play two different characters. They had to play Connor up until, like, 15 minutes into the show, like, who Connor is, with the very little dialogue he has, and then they have to play Evan's Connor.
Yeah.
They have to play basically just, I guess, quote unquote, Evan's evil twin, like how Evan sees Connor, which he doesn't know him.
Yeah, it's pretty. He doesn't have a lot of lines, and for those that don't know, Dear Evan Hansen is basically the story of this kid Evan, who you find out in the beginning of the show that he's, like, broken his arm or whatever. He has a cast, and he's super, like, he has a lot of anxiety. He's very socially awkward. He doesn't have many friends, and he's obviously going to therapy, like, trying to work on his issues. So his mom's kind of pushing him to make friends. So the first day of school, he bumps into this kid Connor, who is super angsty, very angry teenage kid that is obviously going through his own issues, and Connor ends up signing his cast. Evan ends up writing a note to himself, kind of like, you know, which is how we start the show, you know, dear listener. He writes, Dear Evan Hansen, and writes this entire letter about how he has a crush on Connor's sister. Connor finds the letter, ends up, like, wanting to beat up Evan, and leaves. Cut to, like, a few days later, Connor has committed suicide, and the only thing that the parents find in his, like, on him is this note that Evan wrote. Parents think that Evan writes the note and assumes that
that Connor writes the note.
I'm sorry, that Connor writes the note and assumes that Evan is, like, Connor's friend. And Evan just goes along with it. So that's kind of where this show goes, and it's this whole deception that Evan is, you know, going along with and like convincing basically the world and his high school and, you know, Connor's parents and Connor's sister that he's been, like, Connor's best friend this entire time, which is not the case. So as much as we learn about Evan, we know little about Connor. And it's just, and Becca's right, like, the actors that have played Connor have to play actual Connor, and then Evan's interpretation of what he knows about Connor, and, like, again, like, I've been calling it Connor's ghost, and it's basically just, like, Evan's evil twin. Yeah, and, like, that's basically the best way to to describe it.
It's where he puts his angst.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I literally could go on and on about Connor, which is so funny because he probably has the smallest role in the show, even though the whole show is about his death. But the whole show is about how the people surrounding him relate to his death or grieve him even when they don't know him. Yeah, exactly. And I just find the show so interesting because unfortunately, my school dealt with a lot of this situation. We had a couple kids when I was in high school, and it's that moment that the whole show is about how people just want to be a part of what's going on, even if they didn't know that person. Yeah. And so there's this character, Alana, who kind of represents that. You know, she's this, I believe she's student body president. She is like an overachiever.
Yeah, she's that definite, like, stereotypical overachiever, like, type A kind of person in school. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And you don't even know about her on the soundtrack. Like, her name is not mentioned, even though she sings. So I only knew because I look at everything except for bootlegs. I didn't know anything about the story. I just knew about her and Evan's family friend Jared just from, loving Will Rowland. And then that's how I knew about him. And then anyway, but Alana represents that character that doesn't know Connor, but is trying to insert herself into this grieving process because Connor didn't have any friends. He doesn't like his sister. He doesn't really like his parents from what we get from the beginning. He just is a stereotypical loner. Like, there's a line that Jared says where he's commenting on Connor's hair, and he says, very school shooter chic, because Connor dresses in all black. He has shoulder-length hair. And first of all, that line in the show, like, people's jaws dropped. I knew it was coming just because there was, after all of those shootings, Pasek and Paul talked online about how they were thinking about changing that line, especially with, I think it was Marjorie Douglas. It was just like right when the show was at its height.
Stoneman Douglas, yeah.
Stoneman Douglas, yeah. Was right at the height of, like, the show's fame was right at the height of that happening. And I just remember, like, everyone talking about that one line. And it did exactly what it was supposed to do. It got everyone to stop and be like, oh, this is that kind of show. Like, this is that kind of kid.
And he's that kind of character. Because, it's definitely a shocking line. And I remember hearing it because I didn't know it was coming. I was not aware that that's what Jared was going to say. And hearing it. And I remember my little cousin looking at me. I remember Amanda looking over at me, and, like, we kind of just, like, well, they went there, and, like, going back to the show, and, like, it definitely hits exactly what it's supposed to. It's supposed to be that kind of, like, shocking, like, oh, okay, wow, it's that kind of kid. Gotcha.
Right. That kid that we all know. That kid that makes you nervous when they're, walking around, which unfortunately, that's how our society views people like that. Yeah. And, like, shuns people like that. And that's, I don't know. I think the character, like, even though they don't have a relationship, the character, like, Connor and Alana's connection, I guess would say, like, in the show, it's such a good way to show that phenomena of people just wanting to be a part of something big, even if they aren't. The show is so good.
It is. Like, it does such a really good job at kind of, like, this contemporary high school scene, because the show is like revolves so heavily around like social media, you know, and it's just so, it does a really good job, especially, you know, you think of Broadway, you think of like old time things, you think like, you know, very old school, and this is the complete opposite. You know, the stage when you first open is literally like a Twitter feed and a Facebook feed that are going down the stage. And it's, you know, so as soon as you sit down and you see the show, you're like, okay, so this is what this is. This is definitely a more, you know, modern take on, you know, life. And it's dealing with things that, you know, unfortunately are very, I don't want to say popular, but it's, you know, dealing with today's issues. You know, suicide has become insanely real, and like it just keeps happening. I feel like more so now than ever before, especially at the high school age, and just how everyone deals with it through social media.
I definitely, one of my favorite parts was the whole set. I loved how not small, I don't want to say small because it was obviously on like a big theater stage, but I liked how simple it was, I guess I should say, because most of the show is told through the screens. So there's a lot of projections. There's a lot of social media feeds. There's a lot of, I loved coming in and hearing like all of the like text notifications. That was so cool. But a lot of
the Skype ringtone. Yeah,
dude, when the Skype rang, I was like, oh my God, this is me and Edie. This is the song I always sing.
Exactly.
If you don't know, listeners, I'm constantly doing the do, 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 every time we connect.
Every time.
Yeah, so I just, I really liked how simple it was, that most of the set, honestly, were these little, like, these little platforms that came in and out, and that's it. Like when they were in the garage, there came a garage cart came out. All of the living room scenes were just a couch,
like a couch or the table, or it was very simplified. Right. It wasn't like entire rooms getting, you know, built and unbuilt. It was either like the bed, or like just the couch, or just the dining room table. It was like this small, almost minimalistic kind of like Broadway set. It was really cool. I agree with you there.
And definitely it kind of made my, like, because I went to school literally for set design and like stage managing, so it made like my heart so happy, because these are the kinds of shows that I designed, like, not so much the projections because those are really hard, but like just the little teeny things that come in and out, because when you're doing a school production or a college production, you have like, if you're lucky, $3,000.
Yeah.
And that's everything from the rights to the set design to the costume to everything. So it literally made me so happy that I was like, oh, I could do this show. Like, I would have to figure out the production, but I definitely could do what they're doing, which makes me so happy, because when you see shows like Aladdin, I'm like, I couldn't make this. Like, so I don't know. It was very cool seeing their, obviously not interpretation because it's the original, but seeing the way that they decided to show that story, because this story isn't like Aladdin where it's supposed to be grandiose and you see all these costumes and everything. They literally wear t-shirts and sweatshirts on stage, or scrubs or yoga outfits. Like it's very real. And that's what I liked a lot about it.
This definitely isn't a Broadway show that takes you to like this impossible, you know, like fake world. You know, this isn't Phantom of the Opera. This isn't Aladdin. This isn't The Lion King. This isn't like any of these kinds of, like you said, grandiose shows that are supposed to transport you to this like new world. This is definitely the time that we're living right now, you know, the places that we're living right now, and the people that we know. You know, this is a very realistic show, very like anyone can see themselves as Evan, or any parent can see themselves as Evan's mom or as Connor's mom, you know, and it's definitely on a level where anyone can go see the show and find themselves in this character or any of the characters and just be like, wow, you know, they hit that nail right on the head.
Absolutely. And it, you know, Pasek and Paul are very good with telling connections through their music and through their lyrics. I know I crap on The Greatest Showman all the time, but like they also wrote Greatest Showman. But their songs, you can feel the connections between the people, and that is what they are good at. Like, this show does not revolve around set design. It doesn't revolve around anything besides the actors on stage connecting. And I don't know. I don't know what I was expecting. Like, in some ways, it's everything I was expecting. And in some ways, it was nothing that I was expecting. And it's so hard because I don't know what I was expecting. But the whole time, I just kept saying, like, oh my God, I'm watching Dear Evan Hansen. Like, it's here. Because I like, Evan was so much more, I don't even know how to say this. He was just so much more real than I could imagine. And I think it's because I'd only seen Ben Platt do like the Today Show. And like, you can't put the whole character out in performances
in one song.
Just because.
And in a performance of one song, because it's so funny because, like, we talk about Broadway musicals and we talk about how the music kind of makes the show because, you know, that's where you're feeling all of these emotions. But Dear Evan Hansen, you learn who Evan is in the first 30 seconds of the show before he even sings a lyric. It's literally him just being super fidgety and having sweaty hands and having a panic attack. And that's who Evan, you know, that's how you learn who Evan is. And it's before any of the music kicks in. It's before anything ever happens. It's definitely the actor's portrayal, you know, is what...
Definitely. Like, and even... Okay, so obviously Waving Through a Window is like the biggest song of this entire show. It's the single. It's the one that when they announce there's going to be a new Evan, it's the song that they released them singing. It's what made me fall in love with Ben Levi Ross. But that was not my that was probably near the bottom of my favorite songs, honestly, because I knew kind of how it was, where it was in the show, but also it is not as interesting as the rest of them, because the rest of them aren't as interesting without the context, whereas Waving Through a Window is interesting in general. Like, it's interesting just listening to it, and you don't really need as much context. Whereas songs like For Forever, once you have the context, you're like, oh.
Yeah. One thing I will say about Waving Through a Window, though, the choreography of that number is insane, because you see, you start from him leaving his house, you know, getting ready to go to school, whatever. But then he gets to school and it's him literally navigating through a sea of people, essentially like him at high school. And it's him, you know, walking through these people, and these people always have their back turned to him. And it's just him feeling like so isolated and so alone when there's like 40 people on stage, and you just feel his isolation for him. And that is strictly through the choreography, not even the song itself, even though I love that song because I think it stands great on its own. And you're absolutely right. You don't really need any context, aside from the actual song and the lyrics. But the choreography of that number is just amazing. I loved it so much. Like, I felt it straight through the entire song because of the choreography.
And also, it really stands to the choreography that you just said that there were 40 people on stage when this is a cast of 9.
Yeah, I know. There's not actually 40 people on stage.
No, but that really stands for the choreography. That it made you feel like he was in a crowd when there's less than 10 people on stage.
Yeah.
At all times. There's less than 20 when you count the orchestra. Like, so, and was the orchestra on stage?
No.
Oh, ours was. I think there just might not have been like an orchestra pit at the Citizens Bank Opera House in Boston.
Okay.
It was so cool. They were like above the stage and you could see them through most of it.
Oh, actually,
really
wait.
Cool.
No, you're right. They definitely did that. Sorry.
They did?
It was like,
okay,
it was
so
4 months ago.
I didn't know if it was just set design.
No. That's definitely how it is. You're right.
Okay, cool. Because it was it was really easy for the conductor to be able to see where everyone is. That's probably why they did it.
Yeah.
Because most of the time the orchestra is hidden or
in the
anything
pit.
like yeah, like in the pit, sometimes when I saw Little Shop, they were up in the balcony, like off to the side. So it was so cool that the music is such an integral part of this show that it was cool to see the actual people who were playing the music. Like,
I know.
Getting so into it.
Another show that does that is Waitress. Waitress has like the band like on stage at almost all the time. Like it's great. Like
That's
they
awesome.
actually get wheeled in and out like a set piece. It's amazing. I love them. Oh, I love that show. Okay, anyway. Back to Dear Evan Hansen.
Listen, that's the only time we've gotten off topic, and we've been recording for a while, so I'll take it. I don't even remember what song was in it. I just remember looking up, because obviously all the musicians' faces are lit just a little bit so that they can see their their
music.
Yep. I don't know why I couldn't think of that word. And it was cool, like the guitar player, I think it was good for you because as the the guitar player was like so into it. And like not saying like a bad thing about him that he drew my attention. I just naturally like seeing what's going on behind the scenes. Like sometimes I get distracted where I'm like, okay, how's this set piece coming out? Oh, okay, I saw Techie. Like I love it.
It's so funny because like I know that you do that because you went to school for it, but like I do that and I didn't go to school for it. I just like love all aspects of everything, so I want to see everything that happens at all times.
Yeah, me too. And like this is like we talked about I don't remember which episode, but we were talking about probably The Greatest Showman, about like what defines a musical. This show, if anyone needs to know what defines a musical, it is this show. This show, I'm going to start crying, and I'm not even done.
We're not ready. I'm not ready. We haven't even gotten to the second act. I need you to stop.
Dude, we haven't even talked about, like, anything. Just because of how much I love the show. Not even, like, I mean, the show in general makes me cry because it's incredibly sad. Well, not more sad. I think it's more overwhelming, I would say, which is the pinnacle of what theater should be. Like, it should make you feel something. Like there were people sobbing around me, like near the end, which we'll get there.
everyone in the theater was sobbing. Like everybody was sobbing towards the end. Like even my stepfather, who is like 6'2" and like 300 pounds, and he's a big dude, and he was just like, I'm not crying. I have something in my eye. I'm like, yeah, okay, sure. He was definitely like, sobbing.
Show, it like weaves the dialogue and through the music. And this show is like the pinnacle of what musicals are. I am not going to be, I mean, I'm obviously going to go see it. I'm probably going to love it, but whatever. I'm not going to be happy when they make this into a movie. Like, it'll be fine, but I truly think that this show needs to stay theater. And that's me talking as a privileged person that can afford to see shows and stuff like that. But I just think this show, it needs to stay theater so that you can see, like you're talking about that moment and waving through a window when it gets really quiet and everyone turns around away from him. And like I'm getting chills just thinking about it. Like,
I know.
You need to see how well this show is put together.
It deserves to be seen live is the thing.
Yeah.
It does.
Like I'll take a Newsies, like how they did Newsies. I'll take that before, but I'm sure Hollywood's going to want it. I just really hope Pasek and Paul don't let them.
Oh, they already gave them the rights. Yeah, that's already happening. However, if it's done the way that the novel is done, I won't be mad. Like, if they just do an adaptation of the novelization of it, like, that'll be okay.
No, but I want the music.
Of course you do. You have a cast album. You can't have it both ways, Becca.
No, okay. There is one stipulation that I'll be happy.
Go ahead, say it.
I just want Ben Levi Ross to play it. He's still young enough. Right? This is, like, and not even as, like, a fangirl kind of thing. I just respect him so much. Like, he's just, it's like how I feel about Andrew Keenan Bolger, like I talked about last week. Like, I just respect them so much that it's not even a fangirl thing. Because if it was a fangirl thing, I would be able to, like, articulate what I'm trying to say. But, like, I just respect them both so much as artists. And, like, that's it.
Okay.
That's all I had. I just want so much success for Ben Levi Rotz. He's so talented and such a baby.
He's doing fine. I promise.
He's doing fine. He's just, headlining a national tour. No big deal.
He's fine. I promise. Okay, so we need to talk about You Will Be Found. You Will Be Found is probably the most emotional song for me as a fan, as someone who's not a parent, because if you talk to parents, then, second act kind of just like takes over everything. You Will Be Found is a point where Evan has decided to start this like movement about suicide prevention and about remembering Connor. So he has to like get up on stage and make a speech about how him and Connor were great friends, which they obviously weren't.
LOL.
And he goes in and he's not the best public speaker because, again, he has social anxiety and has like, he has issues with talking to people. And he goes and he has like all these note cards and he stands up and he starts giving a speech, and then his note cards are out of order and then he drops them and it's this whole thing. And then it leads into You Will Be Found.
And even before You Will Be Found starts, he literally has a panic attack on stage. Like even bigger, like an actual, I could feel like what my panic attacks look like, panic attack on stage.
Yeah.
And that's the moment that like, I was like, here it comes.
Yeah, it does such a good job at just like completely reaching out to people who have felt that, who have felt anxiety, who have had panic attacks, who have felt like they have no one, that they're alone, that they're like just completely isolated, especially at that age when you're 15, 16, 17 years old. And you feel like the world is out to get you, and you feel like you have, like, no one understands what you're going through, when millions of people are going through the same things that you're going through on a constant basis. But at the time, you don't really feel that. And You Will Be Found just like I'm going to start crying. I'm trying really hard not to start crying. But it does. It makes you feel like, there's hope. And it gives you this sense of like, of finding hope and finding people, finding your tribe. Like that's what this song, like, at least for me, that's what it makes me feel.
Yeah, definitely. And I've definitely listened to like this specific song when I need like that message. Like I've definitely, if I was going to get a Dear Evan Hansen tattoo, it would probably be a line from like You Will Be Found. Like it's such a great, even just like the title, not even going into the rest of the lyrics, like it's such a good way of portraying that without even really listening to the rest of the song. Like it's about someone coming to get you. It's about, like Evan says, there's a whole point at the beginning of the show where he talks about him breaking his arm, how he fell out of a tree and he's just waiting there for someone to come get him, and no one comes. And like that, just like how we were talking about Connor's character, that is such a good, like, tight little representation of who Evan is. Like, him waiting at the bottom of a tree after he broke his arm, just waiting for someone to come help him.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, like, the You Will Be Found is such, like, a profound way of being like, no, someone's gonna come get you. Like, there are people that love you, and someone will reach out to you.
In our notes, it says episode about Dear Evan Hansen, literally just us crying for 2 hours. And I think we've hit that point where we're just going to cry for the rest of the show.
Yeah. And we didn't even talk about Sincerely Me.
Oh my God, I skipped Sincerely Me. Yeah. Oh my God. Okay.
This show just means so much to me. Like, even before I saw it.
Okay, I've composed myself a little bit. Maybe. Okay, this song is just, it means a lot to me, and I know it means a lot to you, and, kudos to Passing and Paul to be able to put so much emotion and so much empathy and so much, like, just make you feel like they're writing legitimately about you and not about anybody else with this one song. Like it's an anthem. It's amazing and I love it, and I need to stop talking about it because I will keep sobbing for the next hour.
Yeah, I another one for me that like destroys me is Words Fail. Because obviously I've never gone through a situation like this. I've never like lied to my entire town about me being best friends with somebody who killed himself.
Yeah. Fair enough.
But listening, even in Good For You, when Evan has his part where he says, stop it, just let me go. Like, it's literally, like, it's cool because you can, like, not cool, but, like, you can feel his emotions, and he's saying this, like, in his head. Like, Words Fail, okay, so before I saw the show, I thought Words Fail was, like, waving through a window, him on stage, pretty much by himself, before the people come in. I thought it was a monologue. I didn't know it was in front of the Murphys.
Nope.
So that destroyed me. I was already destroyed by Words Fail every time it comes on. And
Words Fail, for those who haven't listened to the soundtrack, the cast album as much as Becca and I have.
If you haven't, you're gonna be so confused.
We're trying here, guys. We're really trying. It's basically Evan's confession. It's him saying this whole thing was made up. You know, this is why I did it. I know it's not a good enough reason, but this is what was going through my head, and this is what was happening. It's basically his confession to this whole sham that he's put together.
Yeah, and he's basically saying, like, there's nothing I can say. Like, I'm gonna start singing it. I don't want to sing that. No one wants to hear that. But, it's basically him saying, listen, I messed up in, like, the worst way. There are so many things that I can't even say right, like, words are failing me. Like, there are so many things that, like, I want to say to you, but words fail. I can't tell you how sorry I am. And there's a line that gets me every single time when he says, and will they hate it? And then he pauses and says, too. Or will they hate me too? And it's that line that just, like, we've all felt that moment when we, like, have hated ourselves and we're so worried that all the bad things that we think about ourselves, other people are thinking. And that's why that song, you know, means so much to me, because I am fortunate enough to have way better mental health than I did when I was 16 and 17. Thank the Lord, because that was 8 years ago. 9 years ago. I would hope so. But as someone who, you know, thought about killing herself in 2013, listening to Words Fail, and then the scene right after where Connor basically asks, or doesn't ask Evan because Evan's conscious, but basically tells him, like, did you fall out of the tree or did you let go? Like, yeah. And it's that moment where you realize Evan tried to kill himself.
Yep.
And that's when I can't remember if it's before or after Words Fail, but, like, the whole second act is about Evan coming to terms with that, because I think it's Connor. I've only seen the show once, but I think it's Connor that says something about how you're lying how can you tell the truth to everyone else when you're literally lying to yourself?
Yeah. I honestly, I know what line you're talking about. I can't remember if it was Connor or if it was, his friend. What's the friend's name? Jared. Sorry, I can't think. We're both, like, crying messes right now, guys. Like, I can't.
It's fine. But that's why we wanted to cover the show, because it means so much to us.
It really does. Words Fail is... There's a couple of songs in this show, obviously, that just make you want to weep and sob, and this is definitely one of them. And, you know, I think a lot of people go through, you know, what I jokingly call teenage angst, when, you know, you hate the world and you think that the world hates you, and you think that you're alone, and it's a very typical, high school, teenage, 15, 16, 17-year-old thought process. I'm telling you, this show just does the most amazing job at connecting with that emotion. And whether you are 15, 16, or 17 years old, or whether you're in your early 20s and you're just getting, the reminder of that feeling when you were in high school, it is a lot to deal with. And this is definitely not one of those, like, I'm going to go in and see a Broadway show and laugh and cry and, and laugh and sing along. And this is definitely a deeper, almost darker, definitely darker, of the Broadway shows. And I love every minute of it.
Yeah.
All the same.
It amazed me when I looked around and saw, like, how many people were, I don't want to say adults, because obviously adults, 'cause I'm an adult, but you know what I mean? Like an adultier adult.
Yeah.
And not millennial. No, not even millennials. There were millennials there too. I'm a young millennial. But, like, the older generations that didn't have any idea what this show was about. They just knew that it won a Tony for Best Musical. Maybe they didn't even know that. Maybe they were just going to see a show. And, like, I would love to have a conversation with someone and be like, what did you think this show was going to be? Like, what? Because unless you look up the synopsis,
yeah,
they don't explain what the show is about I mean, obviously, because it could be very triggering to some people, but they don't tell you what the story is about in any of the, like, press, in any of the, until you deep dive into, like, Playbill or something. But, like, on the Today Show, they don't tell you what this show is about.
Yeah, they play it up as, like, oh, this is Evan who's, going through high school problems and is a little anxious, and here's Waving Through a Window by Ben Platt. Yay! Like, that's the Today Show thing. And it's so much more than that. It's so much more than just like, oh, this is a typical high school kid who's going through typical high school problems. I mean, yes, it's relatable to anyone, who has been in that position. Well, maybe not in that position where they've faked a friendship with someone who has committed suicide, but who has felt so alone the way that Evan does. As far as the older generation, my mom didn't know anything about the show before going in. She knew that I listened to the music. She knew Waving Through a Window. She knew that Benji from Pitch Perfect, was the original Evan. And that's basically all she knew about it. And when So Big, So Small came on, and it's
oh God, when
Evan's mom tells him, I'm sorry if I wasn't the perfect mother, this is what I went through being a single mom. When that song was performed, my mom was a mess. For her, like, that was just, like, completely heartbreaking. And she, to this day, if that song comes on, like, she's a ball of emotions and just weeping and literally we left and she went to the merch table and tried to find something with a lyric from that song, and the only thing they had was does anybody have a map? So she bought that instead because she says that that's honestly the truth. But I feel like it connects to everyone. Like, my mom was not expecting to have the emotional reaction that she did when we saw the show, and when So Big, So Small came on, and she's the line that he's like, and then is there another truck in the driveway, one to take mommy away? Like, my mom,
oh my God, that song kills me.
that song completely wrecked her. And and my stepdad, like, I'm telling you, like, everybody in our group was crying, from the youngest in our group, who is 14. Yeah, she was 14 when we saw it, to my mom, who was the oldest in our group. She's 53, or she's turning 53. Sorry, Mom, I added a couple months to your age. It spoke to every single one of us on a different level. And it's just, it's amazing how they did that. Completely amazing. Like, I'm trying really hard not to cry right now.
I mean, I already sobbed, so. It's so funny. I feel like we've been talking about the show and we've covered everything, and it's been an hour and we haven't hardly even covered any of it. Which is it speaks so well to how well this show is done. Like, you get you get the Jared, who is hilarious.
Oh, yeah. I know we've been talking about all of the sad things, and we've been crying, and we've been talking about, you know, all of the deeper issues, the suicide and the loneliness and all of this about this show. But this show is hysterical. Like, it's very funny. Evan's family forced friend, Jared, is the funniest kid in this entire show. He's great.
My favorite is it isn't even in Sincerely Me. I almost said Sincerely Us. That's hilarious. It isn't even in Sincerely Me. It's a side scene where they're reading another of Connor's letters, and Jared makes Connor say that he wants Jared to be a part of the group.
Oh, yeah.
And then him and Connor do like a little dance, and they do the dance that they did in Sincerely Me.
Yeah.
And like, or even his laugh, his cackle. Oh my God. It's just so funny. And it's another one of those things that, like, yes, I would have wanted to see the original cast because of Ben Platt, but honestly, I want to see the original cast because of Will Rowland. Like, I could just, like, I don't know, like, so the guy that plays Jared, who's also named Jared Goldsmith, is hilarious. He's a funny Instagram. You also follow him. He's hilarious. But, the way that he just portrayed, like, this, I don't even want to say, like, popular, because I don't think Jared by any means is popular, but he's definitely one of those kids that just kind of, like, floats between everyone. Like, he's not unpopular, but he's not popular.
He's definitely not, like, the popular kid, but he's that kid that kind of just, like, he's definitely that, like, kid that is funny enough that he's just, like, a part of, like, everyone's clique for, like, a second.
Right. And he's, like, so confident, supposedly. I mean, how confident can 16-year-olds be? Shout out to the 16-year-olds listening to this, but anyway. Like, however confident a 16-year-old can be when they're still trying to, like, figure themselves out is what I meant. But I don't know, he's such an interesting character that you don't really get to know through the soundtrack. He's another one that you don't really get to know through the soundtrack. Yeah,
because you only really hear him on Sincerely Me. Like, that's really the only place that he kind of, like, shines. And that's where you kind of realize that he's going to be the comedic relief, because as they're writing these fake emails between Evan and Connor, you know, you see, like, his sense of humor, his definite 16, 17-year-old boy sense of humor in that song. But he is great on stage. Like, that character is hilarious. There's really nothing else I can say about him.
Yeah, he's such a good, like physical actor, which you wouldn't expect to see in this show, but, like, just the way he, like, holds himself, and he's, like, super goofy, and there's the part that I was talking about, he's literally sitting in a chair, and he's, like, slumped down, typing on the laptop, and I'm like, that is every teenage boy. Like, that, like, I saw that, and I just flashed back to, like, all my guy friends from high school, and I'm like, that, even college, like, that's a teenage boy right there. He's just such an interesting character that I wasn't expecting to love as much as I did. Because, again, when you listen to the soundtrack, you're mainly focused on Evan. He's hardly ever not on stage. The only time he's really not on stage is when we're at the Murphys and he's not there.
Yeah.
Which in itself is, like, a huge feat to whoever plays Evan. That's, like, crazy.
That's a lot of time to be on stage.
Yeah. And I have a little bit of a theory. We were talking about costumes earlier. And this may be a theory I saw on Tumblr. I mean, not Tumblr, because I just see Tumblr posts on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. I don't actually go on Tumblr anymore. I just see screenshots because that's what our world has come to. But there's, like, this theory that when you see Evan, he's in a polo. And then the next time you see, like, when he changes clothes, he's in a button-up with a dark blue shirt underneath it. And the button-up is open. And then the next time you see him, he's putting on, the shirt is buttoned up. Because he's going to give his mom is about to give him a tie. Yeah. And then he puts the tie on. And that's all of Act 1. Is him, like, first of all, I was very impressed with Ben Levi Ross being able to tie a tie on stage. I can't even tie a tie. The whole time I'm like, wow, I am really impressed right now.
All the guys out there who wear ties on a like daily basis are like, it's not that big of a deal.
It
They're
is. I mean, I know how to tie-tie.
Fully rolling their eyes all the way to the back of their head right now.
I know how to tie a tie. Does not mean I'm good at it. But like, and then at the end of Act 1, he has gone from a like loser fitting polo and an open button shirt to having a tie on, and his shirt is all the way buttoned up, kind of like a noose. And then, because that's him leading to it. And then the next time you see him after like the speech in You Will Be Found, he has a black hoodie on, which is what we see Connor in, and it's open. And then throughout Act 2, it slowly gets zipped up until the end, when he's wearing, like, after the whole thing happens, he's in that hoodie. That whole thing, that black hoodie, that is not Evan. Evan, where, like, you never see him. There's, like, one scene where he's in a green polo, and that's only because he has the hoodie on. Like, you always see him in blue.
Yeah. Which
makes sense, because blue is a sad color. Like, that's why the show is all blue. And it's also a relaxing color, but I think they were going more for the sad thing.
Yeah.
And then, at the end of the show, he's still wearing blue, but it's not buttoned all the way up or zipped all the way up, because it's like a physical representation of showing his anxiety.
Yeah.
Like, it's showing it slowly creeping up his chest to his neck.
Yeah.
And I just think that it's too obvious for it not to be on purpose.
Oh, for sure. I think it's 100% on purpose, because I hadn't even seen that theory, and like I noticed the conscious decision to do that throughout the show. Yeah. And I think the black hoodie in the second act is definitely very this whole Connor thing taking over his life.
Right.
I that's how I interpreted it as well. Because it's the black hoodie that Connor seems to be wearing, nothing but black the entire time that we see him. So the black hoodie for me was definitely like, okay, this whole Connor thing is taking over Evan's life, which is why he's wearing the black hoodie, and it's getting zipped up more and more and more every scene.
Yeah, definitely. And then he's back to wearing blue.
Yep.
Because then he's back to being Evan. I also was not expecting to like Larry Murphy, because I don't like the baseball song. And I said this to the actor that played him when I went stage door after. I literally said to him, I was like, I don't know if this is a compliment, but I just want to let you know. I was like, I'm not sure if this is a compliment. I did not like Larry Murphy as a character until I saw you portray him. I was like, I didn't like How to Break in a Glove. I didn't get the song, and then I saw you portray it, and I got it. And like, it wrecked me. Because it's such a like, quote unquote happy song, because it's about like his relationship with his son, but like, it made the part when like Connor, when they have like the baby pictures of Connor they put him up on the screen.
Yeah.
And then when his quote unquote suicide note comes out, and his dad has an actual breakdown on stage in the middle of the stage and is like just sobbing. Hearing How to Break in a Glove just solidified those moments. I do not think they would have impacted me as much without that song, because I've always said, whatever, How to Break in a Glove doesn't need to be in the show, blah, blah, blah. I'm an opinionated, pretentious theater person. I don't know what to tell you.
It's so funny, because like I remember you telling me that before you saw the show. You're like, oh, that's just like really the one song that I'm just like, whatever, in the entire soundtrack. And I remember feeling similarly, that I was just like, oh, it's like I kind of understood the purpose of it, just by listening to the Cast album. But I remember seeing it on stage is completely different, because again, it's you feel it through the portrayal of the actor. And it's theater in general is like that. There's a lot of songs on soundtracks that or on Cast albums that like I never were like, oh yeah, that song's great, it's catchy, whatever, that's it. And I never really had an emotional connection until you see it live, until you see the scene that everything else that goes attached to it. And How to Break in a Glove is such a, I guess, throwaway song until you see it, until you see, the portrayal of this dad who didn't have a relationship with his son, And now his son's gone, and now he can never have a relationship with his son. And it's just like him kind of coming to terms with it and him trying to find a replacement almost in Evan. And they're both kind of trying to find replacements because Evan, you know, dad isn't in his life. So he's trying to, you know, fill that void. And, you know, Connor's dad is trying to fill the void of Connor. And it's just...
And it also makes... I know Requiem is in the first act, which is another one of my favorite songs that we didn't even talk about. We haven't even talked about Zoe at all.
We haven't. We're terrible.
But it makes his portion of Requiem that much more heartbreaking when you hear how much he did try with Connor. Like, he didn't try... He was the stereotypical American dad that wanted his son that is not interested in sports to play sports. And also, we don't even know what Connor is interested in. We know nothing except for the fact that he has it's probably music because he has a record player in his room. Yeah. Like, that's the only thing we see, and we're in his room a lot in the show.
Yeah, which
is creepy. Not a biggest fan of that, but that's fine. I get the representation. So it's interesting that the only thing that we know about Connor, really, and it's only assumed or implied, is that he likes music when a lot of Zoe's character is the same way. Like, a lot of Zoe's character we find out through Evan when he talks about how she does jazz band, and then there's a scene where she comes on with a guitar on her back. And so it's interesting to think about the fact that they might have been, like, good friends, in, like, the way siblings can be, just by the fact that they probably were both really into music. And so it's really sad the fact that they
never got the chance to be close.
Connect that way because of Connor's issues.
Zoe's such an interesting character. As, like, a little sister myself, it's funny because, like, my brother and I were never close growing up. Like, we were very at each other's throats a lot. In the way that siblings are, I think, you know, I was always the little sister that was trying to tag along, and he just, you know, didn't appreciate that. And it wasn't until we were adults that we really kind of, you know, started getting close and stuff. So it's funny to see, well, not funny, but it's, you know, to see Zoe kind of tread the same line, but at the same time, like, because of Connor's issues and because of his, like, you know, extreme personality, you know, it be amplified so much more. It's crazy to think, like, what things can be like, you know, if you tweak one detail.
Right. Like, if you took his violent nature, because honestly, she probably just wanted a brother. Like, she just wanted a sibling and not this scary guy that lives in her house.
Yeah, of course. Of course it's what she wanted. I mean, again, speaking as a little sister, you know, all I ever wanted to do was hang out and be with my brother because he was so much older in 2 years and so much cooler than me, you know, in my mind. So much so that, like, my brother and I are really close now. You know, we hang out all the time now. And we're very close in age, and, you know, but again, you kind of have to get past the whole teenage part of your life in order to get there, at least in my experiences, in my opinion. So it's tragic and heartbreaking that they couldn't get there, because I feel like if Connor could have gone past high school, could have gone to college or not gone to college and just found, like, his people. Like, I feel like whenever you get to that age or whenever you get to that point in your life where you kind of just find the people who make you feel the best about yourself, if that makes sense, and help you get to a point where you feel good about yourself. It's not even about other people's validation. It's just, you know, where you feel comfortable enough to be yourself around other people is what I'm trying to say.
Definitely.
Whenever that point is in your life, the journey getting there is always the hardest part. Mm-hmm. But once you get there, it's great. And unfortunately, Connor doesn't get there. And I feel like if he would have gotten there, then him and Zoe would have had a great relationship because of the fact that they do seem to have a lot of things in common.
Yeah, like there's the moment right before For Forever when they're talking about going to the orchard, and you see that moment of Zoe remembering her brother before he was the monster in her story.
Yeah.
Before he was the villain that she had to live with. And I really like the song Requiem. It's probably my favorite song that Zoe is in, because I think Zoe is such an interesting character in general, because she's the only one that's like, listen, I'm not going to glorify my brother. And she's like, obviously sad that he's gone, but she's more of the angry stage of grief. She's like, why are we talking about how wonderful he was when he wasn't?
Yeah.
Why are we talking about how he was the perfect friend and brother and son when he wasn't?
Yep.
And I just think it's so interesting hearing her side of the story as like a foil to Alana, who doesn't know Connor at all and talks about how wonderful he was. Same with Evan. And then there's Zoe, who knows him incredibly well in the way only siblings can know you.
Yep.
Which is hard for me because my siblings are 13 and 14 years older, so I don't have this relationship with my siblings.
Yeah.
I basically was an only child, so it's really... sibling relationships are always so interesting to me because my siblings are a year and a half apart, so I see that relationship in them, but I don't have that relationship. And so seeing Requiem, like her talk about how he was a monster in her life. Like, how dare you tell me that he wasn't a monster?
Yeah.
How dare you tell me that he was perfect when I know he wasn't? And she's only a year younger than him.
Yeah, of course.
So they are very close in age.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting to see her perspective, because you don't get to see that in like real life, because who wants to be that person?
Of course. Yeah, it hit her whole I guess angle of this story, her perspective of it is definitely an interesting one, because, you know, she starts off with Requiem and is basically like, everyone's crying, everyone's acting like he was this saint, like he was this great person, and he wasn't.
Right.
He was not the monster that I knew. Like, he obviously was not a good person to her. And then her growth of, not even growth, just, you know, in the next song, Evan's, you know, making up all this stuff that Connor allegedly told him about her. And it's really Evan who has been watching her for God knows how long, because he has this crush on her. And, you know, noticing like all of these things about her. And then seeing Zoe's reaction to thinking that her brother actually like cared and like noticed and like thought about her. It's heartbreaking because you want it to be true, but you as the audience know that it's just another fabrication of Evan's like whole story.
Right.
And but you see how much she wants it to be true, how much she wants, as much as angry as she is, as like nonchalant about the whole thing she is, because of the fact that they didn't have a relationship. The second that she thinks that they could have, or thinks that her brother wasn't this monster, you know, she's kind of hungry for that information, and she's very like receptive to having her mind changed about the whole thing. Yeah,
and like there's the moment right after the chorus between like the two verses where she says, "Well, did he say anything else?" And Evan says, "About you?" And she goes, no, it's fine. I don't want to know anyway. Yeah. And everyone can like relate to that.
Yeah.
Because it's the being vulnerable, asking the question that you're nervous to ask, and them not reacting the way you want them to, and just immediately be like, "No, it's okay. It's okay. It's fine. I didn't want to know."
Just kidding.
You know, like it just she's so interesting. And our society is not kind to teenage girls by any means. As someone who grew up as a Jonas Brothers fan and like the typical fangirl, our society is not kind to teenage girls.
No, they're
not. I'm not saying Zoe's like that, but there's a quote that I think it was John Green. It's probably John Green. It's always John Green for me. Where he says someone asked him, "Why do you write for teenagers?" And he said, "Because teenagers are the most interesting and important parts of our society." And like Zoe is such like the personification of that, because she doesn't react the way everyone expects her to, as this as this child, as the sister of someone who died.
Yeah.
Like, doesn't react the way that you expect her to. And she's such, like, this is gonna sound so stupid, but she's such a person. Like, she's not stereotypical. She's not any of it. She's a person. And Only Us is, if someone asks me what's the greatest love song of all time, it's Only Us. Because it's very rare that we see the girl saying to the guy, you don't, like, you see the guy being insecure in the relationship, not the girl.
Versus the other way around. You're absolutely right. I actually never thought of it like that, but you're right. It's, Zoe's the one that kind of makes the first move after Evan's serious misstep. But Zoe's definitely the one that makes the first move and is the one that's comforting him and making him feel secure in their relationship versus versus Evan making her feel secure in their relationship. That's so true. I never thought about it like that. I don't know why I didn't. I never realized. I hadn't
really thought of it, honestly, until I saw the Good Morning America performance of Laura Dreyfus and Ben Platt doing it.
I love that performance.
If you can't go see this show, please just go watch that performance. It's truly amazing. And like it tells a teenage love story in such an innocent way. Like it tells it in such like a realistic way. It's not Riverdale where they're having sex every weekend. It's like, I mean, in the show it's implied. Riverdale. You've never seen Riverdale?
I've never seen Riverdale.
Well, don't get me
into any other no more teenage drama shows, please. Thank you. I think the Teen Wolf was enough for me. I'm good.
Fine, even Teen Wolf. But I only watched the first season of Riverdale, and then I was like, oh, okay, this is not as awesome as Teen Wolf. Cool. Glad we established this.
Sorry, Pix. I know you love Riverdale. I love you.
But so their relationship is so innocent. Like it's kind of implied in the show that they have sex after Only Us, but it's only implied. All you see is them lay down making out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, I just love how realistic it all is, if that makes sense. Like, I don't know. Like, even when you think of, I mean, this is very not on the same level, but even when you think of like Heathers, Heathers is about the same age. Like, they're all 17.
Yeah.
And it's so like sexually driven. And it's
no, I think it's funny because like I keep saying funny and it's not funny. It's just like what I realize is everyone's super awkward in high school. No one is Regina George. No, like, and as much as they try to be, like, everyone is really awkward. Normal people are awkward in high school. And Evan and Zoe together in their relationship are super awkward. Evan has the sweaty hands and it's the whole thing about, oh my God, what if she holds my hands and my hands are sweaty? or what if she touches me?
Speaking of, like, how much genius this character is, just that little motion of him about to kiss her or taking her hand and him just wiping his hand on his pants.
Yeah, like, it's the awkwardness of like their first relationship, and it's just so real. It's not like, oh yeah, they both know exactly what to do at the exact right time and it's gonna look gorgeous on stage. No, it's super awkward and it's super high school, and I love every minute of it.
That's why I love that right now Evan and Zoe are being played by 17 and 18-year-olds right now. Like, I think it's so interesting that they made that casting decision. It's so cool that Evan right now is being played by someone who's the same age as Evan.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, it's great.
Andrew Barth-Feldman. Why do all these people have such long names? But like, seeing, and he's another one that I love. Like, I love Ben Levi Ross. Like, I just think he's so funny, and I like respect him so much, which is funny because he's 17
and he's adorable. But, legitimately adorable.
Yeah. And it's just so interesting to see, like, this is his first Broadway role, obviously. Not obviously, I guess, because there are kids' roles on Broadway, but it's, like, his first role, and he's playing someone who is him, like, his age. Like, he is the same age as Evan Hansen.
Yeah.
Like, it's just so, so interesting. And, like, I've seen, there's another of Only Us, but seeing when they just had the Stars in the Alley performance in New York City. Yeah, and that's actually, I'm wearing my Dear Evan Hansen shirt right now. I bought the baseball tee one specifically because these are all the shirts they wear when they do like Stars in the Alley.
Oh, what a nice shirt. It's almost like I also have that same shirt.
But if, like, watching him and Mallory, I can't remember her last name, but the girl that's playing Zoe right now, watching them perform it as teenagers, like, seeing them perform it, I was like, oh, like, this is what it's supposed to look like. Like,
yeah.
It was like when I saw Newsies played by a teenage cast. I was like, oh, they're not 30-year-olds. Like,
and
luckily,
like,
Evan Hansen is very...
We're definitely not knocking, like, Ben Platt or Ben
Right.
Levi Ross, who are older than 17 years old when they played this role. But yeah, there's definitely something to be said about seeing a character portrayed by an actor who's the same age, who might have the same kind of like awkward teenageness and is not faking it. It's definitely coming off more real than anything else.
Right. And by any means, Ben Platt and Ben Levi Ross are not old because Ben Platt is younger than you and Ben Levi Ross is only 22. So like,
oh my God.
They're
babies. Like, it's fine. They're basically 12.
Like, I actually am glad that I saw Ben Levi Ross because he already plays young. Like, he just has a young face.
Yeah. So
it works. I think he's going to be playing teenagers for a while.
fair enough.
But it's just like, it's just interesting because I'm used to seeing like Jack Kelly played by Jeremy Jordan. and so it's just so cool seeing someone that actually looks that young play someone that young. Going back to the Riverdale thing, those people do not look that young. Even Teen Wolf, they did not look like they were the correct age. They did in the first season, but that's it.
No, I think they all looked way too old, but it's fine.
Yeah. So like, it's just the show is just so it's just taken so well, like every single step, the way that they've done it, in my opinion, is just the way it should have been done.
I love it so much. And if you have the means, if you have the opportunity, I don't know if you can tell, but we highly recommend this show.
Yeah.
It's a great show, and I can't recommend it enough at all.
It's a show that everyone needs to see.
I agree.
It's one of those stories. Like, this would have been a classic novel. This is a classic novel about the 2010s. Like,
you're getting the book, right?
Yeah. You're
getting the audiobook, right?
Yeah.
Okay. It's definitely narrated by Ben Levi Ross, and it's such a good...
I was talking to Edie about, I was like, well, why would I get the audiobook? I don't have Audible anymore. And she goes, what do you mean? And I was like, why would I get the audiobook? And she goes, it's narrated by Ben Levi Ross. And I was like, well, guess who's getting the audiobook?
There were definitely expletives in that statement that I texted you, but it's fine. We'll leave those out. Yeah, you should definitely get the audio. The cool thing about the audiobook is that there's a part where like Zoe is this is not really a spoiler, but like they definitely play more into like her musicianship ness. That's a word. So like she goes to kind of like these like coffee shops to like play live music or whatever, like open mic nights, and she's writing like Requiem. And like, so in the audiobook you actually hear like a rough cut of like of Requiem, and it's really like, it's top notch audiobookness. Yeah, I can't speak today. English is a hard language. I highly recommend the audiobook. The novel's like adorable. I love it so much.
Definitely.
I don't know if it counts for when we talk about shows that have been books because it was a book after the show, but I'm sure we'll talk about it.
Well, I mean, our whole show literally revolves around the structure of Dear Evan Hansen.
I don't know what you're talking about. Our show's not a play off of a lyric of a song from Dear Evan Hansen at all.
Right? It just, I don't know. It's my favorite show. And I love Newsies because Newsies is like the stereotypical show tune show about like a revolution. That's not Les Mis. But this is the pinnacle of what I love about theater. Like the way that the songs feed into each other. it's literally Evan breaks out into song a million times.
Yeah.
And like, it's not, I'm glad that Requiem wasn't like it was in the book. I'm glad that she wasn't singing this in front of someone. It's literally her breaking down and needing to sing this, and then her parents in different rooms doing the same thing.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about musical theater. That's why I don't like jukebox musicals. That's why, like, I like when you feel so much emotion that you just need to break out into song. And I don't know. It's true, like, truly a masterpiece. Like, if 150 million% deserved the best musical Tony.
I mean, it got it. So
yeah.
Like, I think the thing that I love most about this show is, yes, it has that, exactly what you're saying, that it's the stereotypical, I'm having all of these emotions, so obviously the only thing I can do is break out in song. But the thing about the songs is that they connect so well with the audience. And like, that for me is key, because you can have a musical that's like, yeah, we're just gonna sing all the time, and it doesn't connect with you, and it might be a catchy song, it might be poppy, it might be whatever it is, it might be very musical theatery and like very, you know, walking down the road, whatever. But this show, I feel, connects to everyone so well. I'm telling you, like, I did not see a dry eye when I left Dear Evan Hansen. Like, everybody felt something, and whether it was, you know, for Evan, whether it was for Zoe, whether it was for the parents, it didn't matter. Like, everyone felt something about something in that show.
Yeah.
And I cannot tip my hat more to Pasek and Paul on this. Like, this show is just, it's great.
And it's funny because they have done so much. Like, they did La La Land, they did The Greatest Showman. There was one more that I found out the other day that I was surprised that I can't remember right off the top of my head. But like, this show, I think this is their Hamilton. Like, this is what they're going to be known for the rest of their life.
Lackady Lack worked on this, right?
Yeah.
That's what I was looking.
He did. He does everything. What do you mean?
I love him so much.
I know. Sometimes I just go on your Instagram and look at that picture of you two.
Sometimes I go on my Instagram and just look at that picture of me, of us two, and I'm just like, oh, that happened.
I honestly could talk about this show for like 17 more hours. Like, we could literally, like, I'm going to buy, the second I can, I'm going to buy the big book, I'm going to buy the novelization, and I'm going to buy the script. Like, right away.
I have the big book and I have the novelization. I don't have the script.
I don't know if you can buy it anywhere not at the show, but I saw it at the show and I was like, I need that.
I have the program.
Yeah.
Like the big program.
I don't look at programs, or else I would buy them, because I like looking at them when I first get them.
Oh, I do
too. Then after that, I'm like, I'd never look at this again. I have a Wicked one that's been on my shelf since 2014 that I think I've opened once. I don't know. I truly think that this is something that needs to be talked about more. And I know that this is a hashtag stop the stigma statement I'm about to say, but like, it's something that we can't be shy about anymore, because
it's a reality. Right.
And that's like society, the way society handles kids like Connor, or why they call teenage suicide an epidemic. And if we talked about this show and this situation more, I just think that it would do way more good than it would hurt.
Absolutely. I agree. I completely agree with that. And not even just Connor, just mental health in general.
Yeah.
Like, because you kind of have the two, like, I don't want to say extremes, but you have two really good examples of people who are struggling with mental health issues. You know, one being Connor, who unfortunately commits suicide, and one being Evan, who attempts suicide and is not successful, but is still struggling, and is still, by the end of the show, is kind of coming up on top. Like, he's dealing with his issues, he's managing his anxiety, you can tell, you know that he's still going to therapy, because he starts the last song with Dear Evan Hansen, today's gonna be a good day and here's why. So you know that he's still dealing with his issues, he's still working on it, but he's putting in the work, and he's getting better, or as much better as someone who struggles with mental health can.
Yeah, and it was nice seeing the last scene be a year later, because he's talking about Zoe graduating.
Yeah.
And he's talking about how he is just taking classes at the community college. and all of that, because it was a surprise to me when the Murphys offered to pay for his college. Like,
that was wasn't so much a surprise to me. I mean, you're led to believe that the Murphys have like this insane amount of money, which they do. Like, you can tell like throughout the show that they are definitely more well off than Evan is. And I think it kind of just plays onto the fact that Evan has given them so much peace and so much so much of more of a connection to their son, who they can't connect with anymore because he's gone.
Right.
That is such a big part of it, that's why they would do something so extreme, something so drastic, something so insane to anyone else. But yeah, I mean, this kid basically came out of nowhere and was like, you know, I know you guys all saw your son as this hateful monster, this angry kid, but this is what he was like, even if that wasn't, obviously ended up not being true. But it kind of gave his parents some sort of peace of mind, if that makes sense. And I think that is a huge deal to them, which is why they go ahead and we're like, yeah, we'll pay for your college. No biggie. Yeah,
I also really liked that at the end of the show, he wasn't with Zoe.
Oh, for sure.
I was very worried about that. I was not. I was. I didn't want it to be wrapped up in a pretty bow, because that's not real life. And this show very much is like real life.
Well, that's why I was never worried about it, was because like this show has gone to all of these lengths and gone through all of this to be so realistic, to be so something that could happen. You know, again, the lie part about it could happen. Like, I'm not saying that it couldn't happen. It's just probably the more unrealistic parts of the whole show. But they've gone through this whole thing of being realistic that not for 1 second did I think, oh yeah, Zoe's gonna find out that he's been lying this whole time, but it'll be fine. They'll still make it. Like, that's not realistic at all.
Right. Yeah. I just think it was nice to see. I don't know how this is gonna come out, but it's nice to see the girl in the relationship be the one that like had all of the power, if that makes sense. Because a lot of the teenage relationships we see, it's usually the girl begging to be with the boy, the girl having the unrequited love, like all of that, if that makes sense. It was nice to see like the way that Zoe ended up handling it. You know, she didn't hate him. She did it first, but she's the one who wanted him to see the orchard, wanted to make sure that he saw this like really crappy situation that they went through, but this beautiful thing came out of it.
Yeah.
And it was nice to see like her be the more mature one in the relationship, which you hardly ever see in how teenage girls are portrayed.
Okay, so for those that don't know, this whole Connor project thing ends up having this campaign to raise money in order to reopen this orchard that Evan had made up, that him and Connor, that's where they hung out all the time. So at the end, they make the goal, and they raise the money, and they basically restore this orchard. And after everything blows up in Evan's face, the Murphys apparently have gone back weekly, or like as much as they can, to this orchard and have grown as a family just by going. So yeah, at the end, Zoe makes Evan meet her at the orchard, and it's the first time that Evan actually makes it to the orchard since the whole thing. But yeah, I get what you're saying. Like, Zoe holds all the cards, and it is very not typical of many love stories that we are given in this generation. So yeah, it's great to see Zoe as a character have the power, be the, you know, the smarter one, the stronger one of the two.
And she's younger, so it makes it even better.
Hell yeah. I mean, yeah.
You can say hell.
I'm trying really hard not to curse.
Yeah, I am never the one to relate to the female characters just because of the way female characters have been shown to us like our entire lives. It's always shocking to people when I tell them that Harry Potter is my favorite character, not Hermione, because there are so many girls that relate to Hermione so much and like view her strength and everything as like this big thing. But Zoe, outside of Evan, because, you know, the whole show is about Evan and we know him inside and out, basically. Zoe is the best character in this show. Zoe is the most complicated. She's the one that doesn't ever react the way that you think she's going to. Like, she's so kind to Evan at the beginning, making sure that he is okay. Like, when Connor pushes him down, right before he signs his cast, like, she goes up and she's like, hey, I know my brother's a jerk. Like, are you okay? Like, she just has so many more layers than we typically get to see of teenage girls.
Yeah.
And it's just so refreshing considering this whole show was written by men. Like, even the guy that wrote the book, Steve Levinson, and Pasek and Paul, those are 3 men.
Yep.
Like, and they portray this character of Zoe so well to how I wish teenage girls were always portrayed. And it's kind of how I felt about Hazel in The Fault in Our Stars. Like, you get to see so many more layers than the stereotypical teenage girl that, like, you see in Mean Girls.
Yeah. No, I get that.
I don't know. She's just such a... Ugh. Her and Evan are definitely... I mean, they're the leads, but it's definitely, like, they're just so realistic and interesting and... Words fail.
Fair enough. Guys, I know this episode hasn't been our usual funny, hilarious. I mean, we're not hilarious, but our usual, like,
I'm hilarious. I don't know about you.
I'm not a funny person. It hasn't been our usual, like, funny back and forth, laughing at each other mainly show. Yeah. This has definitely been a more serious show, but this show, this Dear Evan Hansen's a very serious show, as funny as it is, and we really wanted to kind of talk about it in its entirety. I hope you enjoyed it. I promise we'll be back to a more lighter tone next episode.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, tweet us. Leave us a comment on Instagram. If you're on Anchor, you can actually leave us a voice message or ask us any questions through the Anchor app, which is pretty cool. But yeah, you can follow us on Instagram and Twitter at sincerelyuspod. You can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at _EnieMeenie. That's INYMEENY.
You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Becca Edos. And I started tweeting, even though Enie didn't think I was going to stick with it. I've definitely been tweeting.
I'm so proud of you.
Follow me over there. I'm hilarious.
You are right.
Just another platform for me to be funny. And then you can also follow the person who designed our logo, Synergetic Art, on Twitter. We have like her handle and everything in a lot of our stuff. So just go follow her there. And remember, today's going to be a great day. And here's why. Because today, at least you're you. And that's enough.
Sincerely us.